My cousin took my tuition money to save his business, said school can wait, then burned $33,200 in 2 months on a failing franchise. Now his wife found out he lied and kicked him out. I'm seizing his equipment through the courts. My cousin showed up at my apartment last night with a restraining order against him and 2 black eyes from his wife's brothers, begging me to tell the judge I gave him permission to use my college fund. I didn't. He stole $33,200 from the savings account my grandfather left me for tuition and told me school can wait while he dumped every cent into a protein shake franchise that closed in 8 weeks. This was back in March. I'd saved up another $4,000 from my campus job to add to what my grandfather left me, and I was literally 2 weeks from paying my fall semester tuition when my cousin called and said he needed to borrow some money for a sure-thing business opportunity. I told him no. He's always been the family fuck-up, and everyone knows it. 3 days later I got a notification that $33,200 had been withdrawn from my account. My heart just stopped. I called the bank and they said a family member with my same last name had come in with my grandfather's old POA paperwork and convinced some new teller it was still valid. It wasn't. My grandfather died 2 years ago. I called my cousin screaming and he actually said, "Calm down, I'll pay you back in 6 months with interest. This franchise is going to make us both rich. You should be thanking me." I wasn't thanking him. I was calling a lawyer. But here's the thing. My family got involved. My aunt started crying about how her son was finally trying to turn his life around and couldn't I just give him a chance? My mom said I was being selfish and that family helps family. My cousin's wife called me and said they'd already signed the franchise agreement and if I reported it to the police, I'd be ruining their kids' lives. I felt insane. They were acting like I was the problem for being upset that $33,200 of my money was just gone. I told them fine, he has until August 1st to pay me back every dollar or I'm pressing charges and suing. That gave him 4 months. August 1st came. Nothing. I called him and he said, the franchise isn't doing as well as projected but it's going to turn around. I asked how much he could pay me right now and he said $400. $400 out of $33,000. I asked where the rest of the money went and he got defensive. Said startup costs were higher than expected. Equipment. Inventory. Marketing. Rent. I looked up the franchise online and other owners said you could get started for $15,000 on the low end. I asked him again where the money went. He hung up on me. That's when I filed the police report and the lawsuit. My family absolutely lost their minds. I got hundreds of texts calling me a vindictive bitch who was tearing the family apart over money. My aunt showed up at my apartment sobbing, saying I was going to put her son in jail and didn't I have any compassion? I told her he stole from me. She said borrowed without asking. I asked her what the difference was and she just cried harder. The lawsuit moved forward. Discovery was a nightmare for my cousin because it turned out he'd lied to everyone, including his wife. The franchise cost $18,000 to start. He spent the other $15,200 on a motorcycle, a home gym setup, a $4,000 gaming computer, new furniture, and 3 business dinners at steakhouses that cost $800 plus each. His wife had no idea. She thought he'd used money from a business loan. When she found out the truth 2 weeks ago, she kicked him out. Then her brothers went to the bar where he was staying and beat the shit out of him. I'm not saying that was right but I'm also not saying I felt bad about it. Now he's served with contempt of court because he missed a hearing and the judge issued a bench warrant. I got a judgment to seize his franchise equipment to cover part of what he owes me, but the franchise already closed and most of the equipment is gone. Sold off or repossessed. I'm going to get maybe $3,000 worth of stuff. Yesterday he showed up here acting like I could fix this. He literally said, just tell them it was a misunderstanding and you gave me permission. They'll drop everything. I told him to get the fuck off my property. He called me a heartless cunt who destroyed his marriage and his life over a loan. My mom is now saying I've gone too far and that I got what I wanted since he's lost everything. She says pressing criminal charges is overkill and I should drop it and move on. Half my family isn't speaking to me. The other half is saying I'm justified but I should consider the damage to his kids. I'm still going through with everything. The criminal case. The collections. All of it. But my aunt won't stop crying when she sees me and my little cousins keep asking why their dad can't come home. I just wanted my tuition money back. Now I'm wondering if I push this too far. Am I a butthole? The sheriff showed up at my apartment this morning to serve me papers because my cousin is countersuing me for emotional distress and defamation of character. His lawyer is arguing that I ruined his reputation by telling family members he stole from me, which apparently constitutes slander since he claims it was a verbal agreement that I'm now backing out of. The filing says I owe him $50,000 for damage to his mental health and marriage. I literally laughed in the sheriff's face and he just shrugged and said, yeah, this one's pretty ridiculous. My lawyer called an hour later and said not to worry, the countersuit is bullshit and will get thrown out, but it's going to delay everything by at least 2 months. Which means 2 more months of my family harassing me about ruining his life while I'm still out $30,000 and working double shifts at a campus restaurant to cover tuition. I ended up having to take out student loans for fall semester. The interest rate is 6.8% and I'm looking at $28,000 in debt by the time I graduate because my cousin decided a protein shake franchise was more important than my education. Every time I think about it I want to throw up. My aunt came to my work last week and caused a scene. She stood in the middle of the restaurant crying and telling customers that I was sending her son to prison over a family disagreement. My manager had to ask her to leave. She screamed at him that I was an ungrateful bitch who didn't care about family and that my grandfather would be ashamed of me. That one actually hurt. My grandfather specifically left that money for school because he never got to finish college himself. He worked construction for 40 years and saved every dollar he could so I wouldn't have to struggle like he did. My cousin knew that. He knew exactly what he was taking. I went out to my car after my shift and my aunt was waiting in the parking lot. She grabbed my arm and said we needed to talk. I pulled away and told her to leave me alone. She started crying again and said her son was living in his truck because his wife won't let him see the kids until he gets help for his spending problem. I said that's not my problem. She said I was the one who caused the spending problem by making him desperate with the lawsuit. I asked her how the motorcycle and gaming computer were my fault and she didn't have an answer for that. Then she said something that made my blood boil. She said, "Your grandfather would have wanted you to forgive him. Family is supposed to forgive." I told her my grandfather also would have wanted me to finish college, which I can't afford now because her son is a thief. She slapped me right across the face in the middle of the parking lot. I got in my car and locked the doors. She was banging on the window screaming that I was tearing the family apart and that she'd never forgive me if her son went to jail. I drove off and she actually tried to follow me for 3 blocks before giving up. I filed for a restraining order the next day. My mom called me sobbing when she found out, saying I was taking things too far and that my aunt was just scared for her son. I told my mom that her sister assaulted me and if she couldn't see that as a problem then maybe we shouldn't talk for a while. She hasn't called since. Neither has anyone else in the family except my dad, who said he supports me but to please not make him choose sides because it's killing my mom. The criminal case is moving forward. The prosecutor said it's a slam dunk because my cousin's own bank records show the withdrawal and his text messages prove he knew he didn't have permission. He's looking at felony theft charges and up to 5 years in prison. His wife's divorce papers were filed 2 days ago. She's asking for full custody and child support based on his financial irresponsibility and criminal behavior. She also listed the motorcycle and gaming computer as marital assets that he purchased with stolen funds and she wants them sold to pay me back. I actually respect her for that. She could have circled the wagons and defended him but instead she's protecting her kids and doing the right thing. My cousin sent me an email yesterday. I shouldn't have opened it but I did. He said I was an evil person who would rather destroy his entire life than show compassion. He said his kids are asking why daddy can't come home and it's my fault they're crying themselves to sleep. He said if I had any heart I would drop everything and tell the prosecutor it was a misunderstanding. He said he'd pay me back eventually, he just needed time. He said I was choosing money over family and that I'd regret this when I was older and realized how much I'd hurt people. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and the prosecutor. They both said it was evidence of continued harassment and could actually make his case worse. The prosecutor said it showed lack of remorse and that judges don't like that. Part of me feels guilty. I see my aunt's Facebook posts about how hard this is on the kids and I wonder if I'm being cruel. But then I remember that I'm $30,000 in debt because my cousin is a selfish asshole who thought his wants were more important than my future. I'm not dropping anything. He's going to face every consequence. But my whole family acts like I'm the villain here and sometimes late at night I can't help wondering if they're right. The prosecutor called me Tuesday morning and said my cousin tried to flee the state. Highway patrol pulled him over in Nevada with $8,000 cash in the car, 2 duffel bags of clothes, and his passport. He told the officer he was visiting a friend but his GPS showed a route to the Mexican border. They arrested him on the spot and he's sitting in county jail right now because the judge revoked his bail. My lawyer said this is the best thing that could have happened for my case. Running makes him look guilty as hell and now the judge is pissed. The criminal trial got moved up because they're worried he'll try again. We're looking at mid-January instead of March. My family is acting like I personally drove him to Nevada. My mom showed up at my apartment Friday night banging on the door and screaming that I needed to fix this. I opened the door and she shoved past me into my living room, crying so hard she could barely breathe. She said my aunt tried to kill herself. Took a bottle of sleeping pills Thursday night and her husband found her passed out on the bathroom floor. They pumped her stomach at the hospital and she's okay physically but she's on a psychiatric hold now. My mom looked at me like I was a murderer. She said, "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I told her I didn't want any of this. I wanted my tuition money back. That's it. Everything else is on him. She said I was being cruel and that I could stop this any time by dropping the charges. I asked her if she understood that he stole from me and she screamed, "It was family money. I lost it." I told her it was my money that my grandfather left to me for my education, and her nephew decided his protein shake fantasies were more important. She said I was selfish and that I'd regret this when my aunt died and it was my fault. I told her to get out. She refused. She sat on my couch and said she wasn't leaving until I agreed to talk to the prosecutor. I called the police. She started crying harder and said I was calling the cops on my own mother. What kind of person does that? The kind whose mother broke into her apartment and won't leave, apparently. The cops showed up and she played the victim hard. Told them I was having a mental breakdown and taking it out on the family. One officer looked at me and I could tell he thought I was the problem until I showed him the restraining order against my aunt and explained the whole situation. They escorted her out. She screamed the entire way down the hallway that I was dead to her and she hoped I ended up alone and miserable. I haven't heard from her since. My dad texted me that night saying he understood why I did it but that my mom was destroyed and maybe I should apologize just to keep the peace. I didn't respond. My cousin's wife reached out to me through Facebook. She said she was sorry for everything and that she had no idea how bad things were until she saw the bank records during discovery. She said she thought the franchise actually cost $33,000 and that he'd taken out a business loan for it. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I was suspicious but I agreed. We met Sunday at a Starbucks near campus. She looked exhausted. She had her youngest with her, a 3-year-old who kept asking when daddy was coming home. Every time the kid said it, I watched her face crack a little more. She told me she found out about the motorcycle 2 months ago when her brother saw him riding it. She confronted him and he said it was a rental for a commercial shoot for the franchise. She believed him because why wouldn't she? She had no reason to think he was lying. Then the lawsuit happened and everything came out. The gaming computer, the furniture, the dinners. She said she felt like an idiot for trusting him. I told her she wasn't an idiot. He lied to everyone. She said her lawyer thinks she can get the motorcycle and computer sold and give me the money as part of the divorce settlement. It won't be much, maybe $6,000 total, but it's something. She said she wanted to do the right thing even if her soon-to-be ex-husband didn't. I thanked her. She started crying and said her kids were asking why I hated their dad and she didn't know what to tell them. I felt like shit, but also, what am I supposed to do? Pretend he didn't steal from me? She said she understood and that she didn't blame me. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She said, he told me you'd forgive him. He said you were soft and you'd cave once the family pressured you enough. He actually planned this. He stole my money betting that I wouldn't have the spine to fight back. I asked her if he ever planned to pay me back and she shook her head. She said he told her the franchise would make so much money it wouldn't matter, and if it didn't then family takes care of family and I just have to deal with it. I wanted to throw up. She left after that. Hugged me and said she was sorry and that she hoped I got my money back somehow. The criminal trial is in 6 weeks. My lawyer said the attempted flight is going to bury him. Combined with the evidence and his complete lack of remorse, we're looking at the maximum sentence. 5 years. My family is already planning their guilt trip campaign. My dad called yesterday and said I needed to think about what this would do to the kids, having their father in prison. I said maybe their father should have thought about that before he stole $33,000. He sighed and said I wasn't wrong but that I was being vindictive at this point. That I'd made my point and now I should show mercy. I asked him if he'd show mercy to someone who stole his retirement fund and he got quiet. Then he said it was different because that's his money and this was supposed to be family money. I hung up on him. I'm not dropping anything. I don't care if my aunt tried to kill herself. I don't care if my cousin's kids are suffering. I don't care if my whole family hates me forever. He stole from me, lied about it, spent it on garbage, tried to manipulate me into letting it go, and then tried to run when he got caught. But every single family member acts like I'm the monster and honestly sometimes at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep I wonder if they're right. My cousin's lawyer sent me a settlement offer 3 days ago asking me to accept $5,000 and drop all criminal charges in exchange for him pleading guilty to a misdemeanor. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my coffee. $5,000. For stealing $33,000. The letter actually used the phrase in the spirit of family healing like that was supposed to make me forget he's a thief who tried to flee the country. My lawyer said it's a desperation move. The trial is in 4 weeks and they know they're screwed. The flight attempt killed any sympathy a jury might have had and the prosecutor has him dead to rights. This is their last chance to avoid a felony conviction and prison time. I told my lawyer to respond with a counteroffer, full restitution of $33,200 plus interest, plus my legal fees, plus he pleads guilty to the felony and serves whatever time the judge gives him. Take it or see him in court. His lawyer called back within an hour screaming that I was being unreasonable and vindictive. My lawyer told him to go fuck himself in much more professional language and hung up. 2 hours later my phone started blowing up. My cousin somehow got my number even though I'd blocked him everywhere and left me 11 voicemails in a row. I listened to the first one and wished I hadn't. He was crying. Actually sobbing into the phone saying his kids were begging him to come home and he couldn't do 5 years in prison. He said his oldest asked him if daddy was a bad person and he didn't know what to say. He said I was the only one who could stop this and if I had any humanity left I'd take the settlement. The last voicemail wasn't crying. He said, "You're going to regret this. I promise you'll regret this." I forwarded all 11 voicemails to my lawyer and the prosecutor. They both said it was witness intimidation and filed a motion. The judge issued a no-contact order and added another charge. My cousin's bail conditions now include wearing an ankle monitor and he's not allowed within 500 feet of me. That was Monday. Wednesday my car got keyed in the campus parking lot. Someone scraped the word bitch into the driver's side door deep enough that I'll need the whole panel replaced. Campus security pulled footage and saw a woman in her 50s with my aunt's exact build and hair color. I filed a police report. The detective said he'd follow up but these things are hard to prove unless the person's face is visible. The camera angle was just wrong enough that you couldn't see her clearly. I know it was her though. I know it. Thursday I got called into my manager's office at work. Someone had called the restaurant claiming to be my mother and said I'd been arrested for fraud and wouldn't be coming back. My manager knew it was bullshit because I was literally standing in front of him, but he said if this keeps happening he might have to let me go because the drama was affecting the business. I wanted to cry. This job is the only reason I'm surviving financially and they're trying to take that away too. Friday my landlord called and said someone reported me for running an illegal subletting operation out of my apartment. The city sent an inspector. I had to take time off work to be there while some guy walked through my studio apartment looking for evidence of multiple tenants. He found nothing obviously because I live alone and wrote it up as a false report. My landlord was pissed. He said one more complaint and he's going to start eviction proceedings because he doesn't need the hassle. I tried to explain that someone was harassing me but he didn't care. He said it wasn't his problem. Everything is falling apart and the trial hasn't even started yet. My cousin's wife messaged me Saturday. She said she got the motorcycle and gaming computer appraised and together they're worth about $7,200. She's selling both and wants to give me the money, but her lawyer said she has to wait until the divorce is final or it could complicate the asset division. She also said my cousin has been calling her drunk at night begging her to talk me into dropping the charges. She keeps telling him no and he keeps calling anyway. Their oldest heard one of the calls and asked her if daddy was going to jail. She said yes. The kid started crying and asked if it was because of me. She told him no, it was because daddy stole money and that's against the law. But the kid is 7 and he doesn't understand the difference. He just knows his dad is gone and everyone keeps saying my name. I feel sick about it, but also what am I supposed to do? Let his dad get away with stealing from me because it's sad for the kids? My dad called Sunday and said we needed to talk in person. I told him no. He said it wasn't a request, he was coming over. I said if he showed up I'd call the police. He actually laughed. He said, "You'd really call the cops on your own father?" I said I already called them on my mom, so yeah, I would. He got quiet and then said he didn't raise me to be this cold. That he understood I was hurt but I was taking it too far and the whole family was suffering because I couldn't let it go. I asked him point blank if he thought what my cousin did was okay. He said no, but that prison wasn't the answer and I should be focused on getting my money back, not revenge. I told him this isn't revenge. This is consequences. There's a difference. He said I'd understand when I was older and had kids of my own. Then he'd see how I felt watching them suffer. I hung up and blocked his number too. The trial starts January 14th. My lawyer says we should be done in 3 days max. The evidence is overwhelming and my cousin's lawyer has nothing. The prosecutor is pushing for the maximum because of the flight risk and the harassment. 5 years. My cousin is probably going to prison for 5 years and my entire family will blame me for it. I'm sitting here at midnight staring at my keyed car through my apartment window wondering if I should just take the settlement and make this stop. But then I think about him buying that motorcycle with my tuition money and laughing about it with his friends and I know I can't. But I'm so tired of fighting. I'm tired of being the villain. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder everywhere I go. Part of me wishes I'd never reported it at all. Just ate the loss and moved on with my life. But the other part knows that's exactly what he was counting on. The jury came back in 43 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Felony theft, fraud, and witness intimidation. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later and my cousin just sat there staring at the table like he couldn't believe it actually happened. His lawyer tried to argue for leniency at sentencing. Talked about his kids, his mental health struggles, his remorse. The prosecutor stood up and played the voicemail where he told me I'd regret this, then showed the judge pictures of my keyed car and read the fake complaint to my landlord out loud. The judge gave him 4 years. Not the maximum but close enough that my cousin's face went white when he heard it. 4 years in state prison plus restitution of $33,200 plus my legal fees which came out to another $8,400. He has to pay it all back at $200 a month once he gets out or his parole gets revoked. I'll be 34 years old before I see the last payment. If he even makes them. My family didn't come to the sentencing except my cousin's wife and she only came because the divorce required it. She looked relieved when they took him away. She told me outside the courthouse that she'd already sold the motorcycle and computer and had a check for $7,100 waiting for me once her lawyer cleared it. That plus the $200 monthly payments means I might actually get most of my money back eventually. Minus the lawyer fees and the 4 years of interest on my student loans. I did the math last night and even if he pays every month on time I'm still going to lose about $6,000 total. My grandfather's money. Gone. My aunt showed up at my apartment the day after sentencing. I saw her through the peephole and didn't open the door. She stood there for 20 minutes crying and begging me to talk to her. Said I'd destroyed her son's life and she hoped I was happy. I wasn't happy. I felt hollow. She finally left and I got a text from my dad an hour later saying the family was cutting me off completely. No more holidays, no more birthdays, no contact. He said I'd made my choice and now I had to live with it. I blocked his number and sat on my bathroom floor crying for an hour. Not because I regretted what I did but because I couldn't believe they still thought I was the problem. My mom sent me one final email before blocking me everywhere. She said my grandfather would be ashamed of what I'd become and that I'd chosen money over family. She said when I was old and alone with nobody who cared about me I'd realize what I'd lost. I wanted to write back and tell her that I didn't choose money over family. I chose consequences over enabling a thief. But I didn't because what's the point? Campus security caught my aunt keying my car 2 weeks later. She came back to do it again and this time the camera angle was perfect. The detective called me and said they had enough to charge her with criminal mischief and vandalism. I told him to do it. She pleaded no contest and got 6 months probation plus restitution for the paint job. The judge warned her that any contact with me would violate probation and she'd go to jail. I haven't heard from her since. My cousin's wife finalized the divorce last month and sent me the $7,100 from the equipment sale. I put it toward my student loans. It barely made a dent but it's something. She also sent me a message saying she was moving 3 states away to live near her parents and start over. She said the kids were doing better now that they had stability and that her oldest had stopped asking about his dad. She thanked me for not backing down even though it made everything harder. I didn't know what to say to that so I just told her good luck. I got a letter from my cousin 2 months into his sentence. It was 8 pages long and mostly rambling about how prison was hell and he didn't deserve this. He said he'd tried to do something good with the franchise and it wasn't his fault it failed. He said I should have given him more time to pay me back instead of ruining his life. The last page said he forgave me for what I'd done and hoped I'd forgive him too someday. Like he was doing me a favor. I threw it away without responding. I'm graduating next semester. My GPA is good enough for grad school if I want it, but I'm taking a year off first to work and save money. I switched jobs to a place that pays better and doesn't care about my family drama. Sometimes I see posts on social media from extended family members. Birthday parties, holidays, graduations. Everyone together and happy. Nobody mentions me. It's like I never existed. I thought that would hurt more than it does. My dad's brother reached out last week. Said he heard what happened and wanted me to know not everyone sided against me. He said what my cousin did was theft plain and simple, and he was sorry the family made me feel like the villain. It was the first time anyone from that side acknowledged I might have been right. I cried reading his message. I still have nightmares sometimes about my aunt's suicide attempt. I wake up thinking what if she'd succeeded and it was my fault. My therapist says that's a normal response to trauma, but it doesn't feel normal. It feels like maybe everyone was right and I should have just let it go. But then I think about my cousin on that motorcycle he bought with my tuition money and the feeling goes away. I'm not sorry I pressed charges. I'm not sorry he went to prison. I'm not sorry I got a restraining order against my aunt or that I called the cops on my mom. I'm just sorry it had to happen at all. People ask me sometimes if I do anything differently and I don't know how to answer that. Part of me wishes I'd never told my family about the theft. Just handled it quietly through the courts without them knowing. But the other part knows they would have found out anyway and it would have been the same result. My cousin gets out in 3 years if he behaves himself. I don't know what happens then. If he'll actually make the payments or if I'll have to take him back to court. If my family will expect me to forgive him because he served his time. I do know I'm never going to another family event as long as I live. I'm done trying to make people understand that I'm not the villain here. I got my money back, or most of it anyway. My cousin faced consequences. My family chose their side. And I'm sitting here wondering if winning was supposed to feel this empty.